Hello friends, welcome back in the session of Human Anatomy and Physiology 2. In today's presentation, we will discuss about the mechanism of respiration and control and center for respiration. How the respiration can be regulated. Now mechanism. Respiration is nothing but the breathing. It is simply combination of inhalation and exhalation. We are taking in air and we are throwing out the air. Actually, these mechanisms are divided into three types. In that, first is pulmonary ventilation. It is nothing but the when you are taking air inside the lungs, it is called inhalation, and when we are throwing out the air outside the lung, it is called exhalation. So it is a combination of inhalation and exhalation, and it also involves the exchange of gases between alveoli in the lungs. So at the atmospheric pressure, in between the atmospheric pressure, it is doing the exchange of gases with alveoli cells. It is called pulmonary ventilation. Now second is external respiration. External respiration is nothing but it is the exchange of gases between the alveoli of the lungs and the blood in pulmonary capillaries across the respiratory membrane. In this process, the blood is getting oxygen and blood is releasing CO2 into the lungs or alveoli cells. Means it is exchange of O2 and CO2 occurs. After that, next is respiratory gas transport. It is nothing but the transport of oxygen and carbon dioxide via bloodstream. And the third class is internal respiration. Internal respiration is nothing, it occurs into our blood capillaries. Into each and every organ at our blood capillaries, the exchange of oxygen and CO2 means exchange of gases occurs. Means the cell is taking oxygen and it is working its function, it is developed into the ATP, it is producing ATP and it is releasing the CO2. So each cell is taking oxygen and it can be taken from the blood capillaries. So that type of the exchange occurs within the body in the metabolic respiration into the kidney, at kidney or in various organs. This in blood capillaries, this exchange of gases always occurs. Our cells consume that oxygen and give CO2 during production of ATP are termed as cellular respiration. So it is also called as cellular respiration. Mechanisms of breathing, pulmonary ventilation. It is completely mechanical process. It is simply a physical process by which we are inhaling the air from the atmosphere and we are releasing the air into the atmosphere. Through nostrils we are inhaling the air, and it also depends on the volume of changes into thoracic cavity. Volume changes lead to the pressure changes which lead to the flow of gases equalize the pressure. This pulmonary ventilation can be divided into two types or two parts. First is inspiration. Inspiration is nothing but the flow of air inside the lung. When we are inhaling any air inside the lung, that process is called as inspiration or inhalation. And expiration, it is nothing but the air leaving the lung. When we are expiring any air from the lung into the atmosphere, that process is called as expiration. Now we will start from the inspiration or inhalation. Breathing is called as inhalation. After each inhalation, the air pressure inside the lung equal to the air pressure outside the atmosphere, which is 170 mmHg. It is also called as 1 atmospheric pressure. But for transportation of that gases, transportation of the air, there must be difference between the this pressure between the air. Means there should be incline or decline into the pressure available into our body and outside. There should be some differences for exchange of gases. So whenever we are inhaling the air from the outside, so inside our body there should be decline in pressure from the outside atmosphere. At least 2 to 3 mmHg should be, the change should be there, that much declination should be there, because the flow of the air always in the order from higher concentration to the lower concentration, from the higher pressure to the lower pressure. So here the in the atmosphere it is 760 mmHg, millimeter of the mercury, and inside the lungs, inside your chest or pleural cavity, there should be the less atmospheric pressure than the outside of the atmosphere. The pressure of the gas in the closed container is inversely proportional to the volume of container. Actually we are discussing here Boyle's law. Simply, what is Boyle's law? Boyle's law, it is nothing but it is the ratio between the pressure and volume. Always pressure is inversely proportional to the volume. If there is more volume, in that case pressure will be less. This means that if the size of the closed container is increased, the pressure of that gas inside the container will be decreased. And if the size of the container is decreased, then the pressure inside that container will be increased. Simply gas cylinder, suppose if we will suppress the gas, suppose it is in the container of 14 liter suppose, and if you are compress it, if you will make it to the 7 liter, gas will be same, but their gas particles will be compressed. Same number of gas will be compressed, volume of gas will be compressed, and they will be occupied in the half quantity of the volume. It means that gas may have double pressure than the normal, which was earlier in 7 liter, now it is in 14 liter, and now it is in 7 liter, means almost the pressure is double. Now if you will see, the pressure of the gas inside the container will be decreased, and that the size of the container is the decrease, and the pressure inside it increases. This inverse relationship between volume and pressure is called as Boyle's law. Suppose we place a gas in the cylinder that has movable piston and a pressure gauge, and that the initial pressure created by the gas molecules striking the wall of the container at 1 atmosphere. If the piston is pushed down, the gas is compressed into the smaller volume, so that the same number of gas molecules strike less wall area. The gauge show that pressure doubles as gas is compressed to its half of original volume. Now difference in the pressure caused by the changes in the lung volume. Air force air into our lungs. When we inhale that out, we have exhale. Simply, if we have to inhale the air inside, so whatever the pressure is inside our lungs or into our chest, it should be less pressure than the outside pressure. So for inhalation to occur, the lungs must expand. If it will expand, means it will increasing the area, it will increasing the volume, which increases the lung volume and thus decrease the pressure in the lung. to below atmospheric pressure, means less than 760 mmHg. The first step is expanding the lung during the normal quiet inhalation involves contraction of main muscle in the inhalation, the diaphragm and the external intercostal muscles. So they are responsible for this process. The most important muscle of inhalation is diaphragm, dome shaped skeletal muscle that forms the floor of thoracic cavity. As we know, diaphragm is just below the intercostal muscle, it is just below the lung, and it provides the space for expansion of lungs. It provides the area, it provides the volume, so that the lung will go downward almost 1 to 2 inch. It is inverted by the fibers of phrenic nerves which emerges from the spinal cord at cervical lever 3, 4 and 5. Contraction of diaphragm causes to be flatten, lowering its dome. It decreases that dome towards the stomach. During normal quiet inhalation, the diaphragm descends about 1 centimeter, producing a pressure difference of 1 to 3 mmHg. Means it is almost 1 to 3 mmHg pressure decrease than the external atmospheric pressure, and the inhalation of about 500 ml air inside the lung. In strenuous breathing, the diaphragm may descend 10 centimeter, which produces the pressure difference of 100 mmHg and inhalation of 2 to 3 liter of air. Contraction of diaphragm responsible for about 75% of air enters the lung during quiet breathing. This diaphragm is having great role of breathing. It involves into the breathing. Without the diaphragm, it is difficult to do proper breathing. The next most important muscle of inhalation are external intercostal muscles. When these muscles contract, they elevate the ribs. So first two ribs will be elevated. As a result, there is an increase in an anteroposterior and lateral diameters of the chest cavity. The contraction of the external intercostal is responsible for about 25% of air that enter the lungs during normal quiet breathing. During quiet inhalations, the pressure between the two pleural layers in the pleural cavity called intrapleural pressure. It is a pressure between the two pleural cavity. It is called as intrapleural pressure, and it is always subatmospheric. Just before inhalation, it is about 4 mmHg less than the atmospheric pressure, or about 756 mmHg at the atmospheric pressure of 760 mmHg. As the diaphragm and the external intercostal contract and the overall size of the thoracic cavity increases, means inside the thoracic cavity can be increases as the diaphragm go down, and also that intercostal muscles also contract, expand. The volume of pleural cavity also increases, which causes intrapleural pressure to decrease about 754 mmHg. Means there is almost difference of 6 mmHg with atmospheric pressure. During expansion of thorax, the parietal and the visceral pleura normally adhere tightly because the subatmospheric pressure between them and because of the surface tension created by their moist adjoining surfaces. As the thoracic cavity expands, the parietal pleura lining the cavity of pulling outward in the directions, and the visceral pleura and the lungs are pulled along with it. As the volume of lung increases, now here the volume of lung will be increases. In this way, the pressure inside the lung obviously will be decreases. So that pressure inside the lung will be called as alveolar pressure, which drops from 760 to 758 mmHg. The pressure difference is thus established between atmosphere and the alveoli. Now in the alveoli the pressure will be 758 mmHg, and to the atmosphere it is 760, means there is difference of 2 mmHg, because air always flow from region of higher pressure region to the lower pressure region, and inhales takes place. So in this fashion the inhales take place, because inside the lung there is two atmospheric 2 mmHg pressure is less than the atmospheric pressure, and as we know the air always travels from higher pressure to the lower pressure. That's why the inhalation means the breathing takes place, inhalation takes place. So air continue to flow into the lungs as long as pressure difference exists. During deep forceful inhalation, accessory muscle of inspiration also participate in the increasing of the size of the thoracic cavity. The muscle are named because they may little, if any, contribute during normal quiet inhalation, but during exercise of forcefully ventilation they may contract vigorously. The accessory muscle of inhalation muscle, the sternocleidomastoid muscle, which elevate the sternum. So the sternum part can be elevated with this help of this sternocleidomastoid muscle. This muscle is available here, which is responsible for this inhalations. So that muscle which elevate the sternum, and the scalene muscles which elevate the first two ribs. So scalene muscle is here which elevate this first two ribs. Scalene muscles, spelling is SCALENE, scalene muscles, and earlier sternocleidomastoid muscle, sternocleidomastoid, sternocleidomastoid muscle. This question can be asked in MCQ also, that which muscles are involved into the inspiration. So this sternocleidomastoid muscle, after that the scalene muscles, and also intercostal muscle, and the pectoral malar muscle which elevate the third through the fifth rib. So third is pectoralis minor muscle which elevate third through fifth ribs, means from third to fifth ribs it will elevate. So this third to fifth rib it will elevate at upward position, at the superior position, because both normal diet inhalation and exhalation during exercise or forced ventilation involve muscular contraction, and process of inhalation said to be active. So this is the active type of process of inhalation, which is very important. Now here we will summarize what is the inhalation or inspiration. In that, again we will see in the point. First point is inspiratory muscle contract like diaphragm descend. Diaphragm will go at downward position. Try to understand how it will moving. So this is the arrow is there, it will go downwards. It provide the space area for expansion. Second point will be thoracic cavity volume increases, due to which this thoracic cavity volume it can be increases. Lungs are stretched, intrapulmonary volume increases. If the lungs are stretched, if it is stretched, so the intrapulmonary volume also going to be increased. After that, intrapulmonary pressure drops. As we know by Boyle's law, if volume will be increased, the pressure will be decreased. It is inversely proportional. So in this fashion, if volume will be increased by expansion of the rib cage, by giving area from the diaphragm, diaphragm will go towards downward. So due to which the area will be increased and the pressure will be dropped by 1 to 2 mmHg. Now the air flow into the lung down its pressure gradient until intrapulmonary pressure is 0. So it will continue the inhalation until it will raise its pressure up to 0, means there should be no any difference will be 0. Up to that it will take the air inside the lungs. So in this fashion, the expansion will occur into this external intracostal muscle contraction will be there. So it will like this, it will increase, expansion will occur, this will also increase, and by all the direction it will move outwards at the lateral position. This is lateral position. So here at this lateral position it will do the expansion, and at the upper position also, at the proximal position also, it will move upward in the superior direction. It will move upward. Now we will go toward the exhalation. What is exhalation? Largely is a passive, it is a passive mechanism. It is not like inhalation. Inhalation is the active mechanism. It is only response. It is just like elastic mechanism, recoil mechanism. So it depends on the natural lung elasticity. As the lung was expand earlier, now it will relax. Normally it is default mechanism. As muscle relax, air is pushed out of the lungs. Force expiration can occur mostly by the contracting internal intercostal muscle to depress the rib cage. Forcefully expulsion or exhalation only can be occur in case of the contraction of internal intercostal muscle. This is the only one muscle which is responsible for exhalation, and for inhalation there is involvement of three types of muscle. What are those? That first is sternocleidomastoid muscle, second is scalene muscle, and third is pectoralis minor muscle. So these three muscles are involved in inhalation, and for exhalation there is involvement of intercostal muscle. Now in this, whatever air we are taken inside the lung, it can be thrown outside, and it is also due to the pressure gradient, because whatever the pressure inside your lung, now it has been increased than the external atmospheric pressure. But in this case the gradient is in the opposite direction. The pressure in the lung is greater than the pressure of the atmosphere. Atmospheric pressure is 760 mmHg, whereas inside the lung it almost raised by 2 mmHg. Normal exhalation during quiet breathing, unlike inhalation, it is a passive mechanism as we discussed earlier, because no muscular contraction are involved except in case of forceful exhalation when you are doing, except that. Now instead exhalation result from elastic recoil. It is called elastic recoil of the chest wall and the lung. It is default mechanism, default system. That's why it is called elastic recoil. Both of which have a natural tendency to spring back, as it is just like spring. So we are stretching the spring, after that spring will regain its position, regain its volume, regain its size. So it is just like the spring, that spring regain its normal position unstretched condition from stretch. So it happens in case of our lungs as well. Two inwardly directed forces contribute to elastic recoil, and that first is the coil of elastic fibers that were stretched during inhalation, and the inward pull of surface tension due to the film of alveolar fluid. Now the exhalation starts when the inspiratory muscle relax. The inspiratory muscle will start to relax. Earlier it was completely stretched, it was contracted. Now after that it will slowly start to relax. As the diaphragm relaxes, diaphragm again come to its normal position. It dome move towards superiorly, upward it will come owing to its elasticity. As the external intercostal muscle will relax, the ribs are depressed. Now the ribs will go to the depressed position, means it will start to decline its volume. This movement decreases the vertical, lateral and antero-posterior diameter of the thoracic cavity. So by all the positions, by all these lateral positions can be decreased, and it will come to its normal position, which decreases the lung volume. That will be the ultimate effect. It decreases the lung volume. In turn, the alveolar pressure increases to about 762 mmHg as the volume has been decreased, but inside that the same volume of air is there, but that air can be compressed because volume is less, area is less, but the material or air is the same, due to which it increases the pressure up to 762 mmHg. Air then flow from the area of higher concentration to the lower concentration. As you know, it is the law, Boyle's law. So from the air, from this inside the lung, which where there is high pressure of air, which go towards the atmosphere where there is low pressure. It is slightly low, 2 degree of pressure. Difference is of 2 degree, 2 mmHg. So the pressure in the alveoli to the area of lower pressure in the atmosphere. So from alveoli, that air will go into our atmosphere. Exhalation becomes active only during the forceful breathing, that I have told earlier also, as occurs while playing a wind instrument, as we are playing with trumpet or we are playing with any instrument where we are blowing the air into that pipe. So that type of instrument like saxophone, or we are using any instrument which we are blowing air through our mouth. So for that, what we are doing during this time, muscle of exhalation, the abdominis and internal intercostal muscles are come in picture. They will contract, and which increase the pressure, and in this abdominal region and the thorax. Contraction of the abdominal muscle moves the inferior rib downward and compresses the abdominal viscera, thereby forcing the diaphragm superiorly. Contraction of the internal intercostal, which extend inferiorly and the posteriorly between adjacent ribs, push the ribs inferiorly, although intrapleural pressure is always less than the alveolar pressure. It may briefly exceed atmospheric pressure during forceful exhalation. So in this fashion, the exhalation occurs. It is a passive process. Now again we will summarize this exhalation very briefly here, point by point. First, the inspiratory muscle relax. Now whatever the muscle which has been contracted earlier, that all muscle will be relaxed. Diaphragm rises, the rib cages descend, it will go to the at downward position due to the recoil of costal cartilage, and the thoracic cavity volume decreases. After that, the elastic lung recoil passively, means it come to its normal position, it regain its normal volume, and intrapulmonary volume decreases. Volume will be decreased, and but the air inside that volume of that rib cage is the same, but the volume has been decreased, and due to which it increases the ultimately 2 mmHg extra pressure on our cage, rib cage, into our alveoli, and the air flows out of the lung down its pressure gradient until pulmonary pressure is 0. And after that, the outside the lung the pressure is high, it is less, it is 760 mmHg, and inside the lung the pressure is 762 mmHg, which is high. And we know the rule, from the high pressure to the lower pressure gradient air flows, and due to which the exhalation occurs, the air from the lungs which go towards the area atmosphere, toward the outside the area, and in this fashion this air will go outside. Now here you can see it will be relaxed completely, not stretched, it will regain its normal position. Now we will start with the regulation of respiration, how the regulation takes place. There are various involvement of some nerves are there, some brain part is there, there are certain centers which are responsible for regulation and control of breathing. Means they are controlling our inhalation, exhalation, they are controlling our speed of breathing, they are controlling our function of breathing, which continuously occurs in our respiratory system. So respiratory systems establish a regular pattern of breathing, and the breathing is one of the symptom of livelihood. So that's why it is maintaining that breathing. Body is having habit to maintain the breathing. That first point is receptor cells near the respiratory center respond to changes in the cerebrospinal fluid H plus caused by increase in the arterial carbon dioxide. So here you can see in this area of medulla oblongata at the respiratory center, here is the medullary rhythmicity area is there. So what happens there? They respond to the changes in the cerebrospinal fluid. So H plus N caused by increases the arterial CO2. So if the arterial CO2 going to be increase here, so which gives signal to the brain that we have to increase our breathing. So the second point is the receptor cells in the carotid. Here this is the carotid artery. So here are the some receptors which gives signals to our brain, which is medullary rhythmicity area. So from here signal will carries, and the aortic bodies, and also there is aortic body. This aortic body respond to the large decrease in arterial oxygen, as here is the oxygen scarcity is developed, due to which it increases the demand, means which send the information towards the brain that here is the scarcity of oxygen, oxygen has been decreased. Here at aortic body, here is the receptor, respiratory center receptor is here, and another is at carotid and carotid artery here. So at this two position, at aortic bodies here, aorta is here, and second is at the carotid artery. So at this position it is having signals, they are having sensors for oxygen. As the oxygen level is decreased, what is oxygen? It is called hypoxia. Hypoxia is nothing but the when we are having oxygen level is decline in our blood, so it signalizes that decline in oxygen level, and it immediately gives information, it immediately gives the signals or impulses toward the brain that we are having less oxygen level, and after that it will start to increase the breathing. And after that, next point is higher centers in the cortex can expert conscious control over the respiration. So as the cortex area also give signals to the brain that we have to increase the respiration. Suppose for alertness, for consciousness, for doing any function, for memory, for increasing your brain, it also requires too much oxygen. As we know, our brain requires almost 20% of our oxygen. That's why it immediately gives signal toward the area, a center of our respiratory center, for increasing the respiratory rate. Our body requires oxygen for various functions. In case of exercise, we require more oxygen. In case of stress condition, in case of emotional conditions, in case of crying, in case of some stress, some pressure, we require more oxygen. So the immediately the signals will go towards our brain for increasing the rate of inspiration, rate of breathing, rate of respiration. Most important respiratory centers. So there are three types of respiratory centers are there into our brain that we must know. In that first center we have already discussed. In that first center is medullary rhythmicity area. So that area which we will find in case of medulla oblongata. In medulla oblongata we will find this medullary rhythmicity area. After that, next two areas are available in pons. This in that first is pneumotaxic area and the second is apnotic area. Now we will start from this medullary rhythmicity area. So that respiratory center which occurs in our brain. So in figure also you can understand here, this is the medullary rhythmicity. Here it is medullary rhythmicity area. This is medulla oblongata. So there are two centers in medullary rhythmicity area. One is inspiratory area and second is expiratory area. Means for inspiration and for expiration, the medullary rhythmicity area is divided into two parts. That is the area which controls the basic rhythm of respiration. There are inspiratory and expiratory area are involved, and during quiet breathing, inhalation lasts for about 2 seconds. We'll do inhalation for 2 seconds and exhalation lasts for about 3 seconds. Nerve impulses generated the inspiratory area establish the basic rhythm of breathing. So we are increasing our inspiration with this inspiratory area which is responsible for breathing. This inspiratory area give rise to the diaphragm to go downward, and also it give order to the sternocleidomastoid muscle to raise that clavicle. We are raising our clavicle, that shoulder, the shoulder bone, that clavicle will move upward to provide the area for our breast, to provide the area for our ribs, for our lungs. So it will stretch our clavicle, and this Callan muscle will stretch our first two ribs. First two ribs can be move upward. So in this fashion the inhalation may occur. While the inspiratory area is active, it is generate the nerve impulses for about 2 seconds. The impulse propagate to the external intercostal muscle via intercostal nerves and to the diaphragm via phrenic nerves. When the nerve impulses reach the diaphragm and the external intercostal muscle, the muscle contracts and inhalation occurs. Even when all incoming nerves connections to the inspiratory area are cut or blocked, neurons in this area still rhythmically discharge impulses that cause inhalations. At the end of second, the inspiratory area becomes inactive and the nerve impulses will cease, nerve impulses will stop, and with no impulses arriving, the diaphragm and the external intercostal relax for about 3 seconds, allowing passive elastic recoil of the lungs and the thoracic wall. Then the cycle repeats. The neuron for expiratory area. Now we will discuss about this expiratory area. There are two areas. Firstly we will discuss about the inspiratory area. Now we will discuss about the expiratory area. Now this area remains inactive, as we also discussed earlier. This is a inactive process. It is a passive process, inactive during quiet breathing. However, during forceful breathing, nerve impulses from inspiratory area activate the inspiratory area, and there is the involvement of intercostal and abdominal muscle which will contract this muscle, and it is responsible for forceful exhalation, forceful expiration of the air from these lungs. And impulses from the expiratory area causes contraction of that intercostal and abdominal muscle, and which decreases the size of the thoracic cavity and causes forceful exhalations. Now after this we will go toward this pneumotaxic area. This is the area which is occurs in pons. Here in pons. In pons also it can be divided into two parts. Two nuclei are there. One is pneumotaxic area and another is apnostic area. Pneumotaxic area is at the superior position and apnostic area is at the lower position. Now first pneumotaxic area. This pneumotaxic area is specifically involved for stopping the inhalation, for controlling the inhalation, for controlling the inspiration. Although the medullary rhythmicity area controls the basic rhythm of respiration, other sites in the brain stem help coordinate the transition between inhalation and exhalation. One of these sites is pneumotaxic area, and this area in the upper pons which transit the inhibitory impulses, it is having the inhibitory impact on respiration. It inhibitory impulses to the inspiratory area, means it is going to be control the inspiration, it will going to be decrease the inspiration, means it can stop or it can pause or it can decrease the intention of inspiration. And what will be the ultimate effect? The ultimate effect will be it will produce the shortness of breath, it will decrease the inspiration. And the major effect of these nerve impulses is to help the turn off the inspiration area before the lung becomes too full of air, means lung should not become too full of air. So for avoiding that, because some space should be empty in our lungs, for that it will control and immediately it will stop the inhalation and it will clarify the air, it will clear the air. And when the pneumotaxic area is more active, breathing rate is more rapid because it will produce the shortness of breath simply. Next area is called apnostic area. It is the below part, this is the at the bottom position of the pons area, and this area is responsible for inspiration. It is another area of brain stem that coordinate the transition between inhalation and exhalation. Actually these three area, pneumotaxic area, apnostic area and medullary rhythmicity area, all the three area are coordinately controlling the rhythm of our respiration. They are controlling our breathing. So these area is controlling the inhalation and exhalation of apnostic area. So in the lower pons it is available, the area sends stimulatory impulses to the inspiratory area that activate in and prolong the inhalation. What is its main function? It produces the prolongation of inhalation. And what is the function of pneumotaxic? It will produce the shortness of inhalation. It will cease the process of inhalation. It will decline or inhibit the process of inhalation. It will shorten that, and this apnostic area is longer the process of inhalation. So in this fashion it is responsible for long inhalation, deep inhalation. When the pneumotaxic area is active, it overrides the signals from the apnostic area. Now here we can see how the regulation of respiratory centers occur, that we can see from the brain. This is the last part as we have discussed here. These are the area from pons, the pneumotaxic area, apnostic area. This is the inspiratory area and this is the expiratory area, and this is the intercostal muscles and diaphragm. They are connected with this medullary rhythmicity area, so they will give order to the intercostal muscles and also to the diaphragm. So in this fashion they are controlling the inhalation and exhalation. Now respiratory centers, they generate the baseline inspiratory rate, so they are also controlling the rate of respiration, how many pulse rate or how many respiratory rates should be there per minute. It can be controlled in the reticular foramen of the medulla oblongata. It is connected with this respiratory centers. When the area of reticular formation will be activated, it will give impulses toward the medulla oblongata to increase the respiration, because for consciousness also more oxygen require. Now chemoreceptors, the sensitivity to the rising and falling oxygen levels, that chemoreceptors are responsible for that. the central chemoreceptors located in medulla oblongata, and peripheral chemoreceptors are there. And the aortic bodies and carotid bodies we have already discussed. These are nothing but the signals. They are the receptors. These are the physical receptors which are available in our body. Aortic bodies means at aorta, and carotid body at carotid artery. So they are signalizing, they are analyzing the level of oxygen into our blood. If it is less, they will give signal to our medullary rhythmicity area, and it will increase the rate of respiration, it will increase the rate of breathing, by which the oxygen level can be inclined, decrease. Now here it is the regulation of respiratory center, how it occurs from brain to the heart, that we will see here. So basic rhythm of respiration set and coordinated by the inspiratory area can be modified in response to input from other brain regions, receptors in the peripheral nervous system, and other factors. Cortical influences on respiration. Because of cerebral cortex has connection with the respiratory center, we can involuntarily alter our pattern of breathing. The pattern of breathing means speed of breathing can be affected with the help of cortex. At cortex we can give order to our medulla oblongata. So we can even refuse to breathe at all for the short time. Voluntary control is protective because it enables us to prevent water or irritable gases from entering into the lungs, so that we can avoid the entry of gases into our lung, or water when we are swimming. At that time water should not get entered inside our lungs. The ability are not breathe, however, is limited by build up the CO2 and H plus in the body. Chemoreceptor regulation of respiration. Certain chemicals, stimuli modulate how quickly and how deeply we breathe. The respiratory system functions to maintain proper level of oxygen and CO2, and is very responsive to change the levels of these gases in body fluids. We introduce sensory neurons that we responsive to the chemicals called chemoreceptors. These chemoreceptors in two locations of the respiratory system monitors levels of CO2, H plus and oxygen, and provide input to the respiratory centers. The central chemoreceptors are located in or near the medulla oblongata and in the central nervous system. They respond to the changes in the H plus and concentration, or PCO2, or both in cerebrospinal fluid. Peripheral chemoreceptors are located in the aortic bodies. The clusters of chemoreceptors located in the walls of the arch of aorta and in the carotid bodies, which are oval nodules in the wall of the left and right common carotid arteries. They are having the signals, they are having the sensors, receptors, which signalizes the level of oxygen and CO2 into our blood, and they are giving response to our respective area of center regulation for our breathing. Now the carotid and the aortic bodies sensitive to the carbon dioxide, pH and oxygen levels. They are responsible for conscious controls, reside in the higher brain centers, ability to modify the brain into the limited. Now in this fashion we have completed our today's topic. Thanks a lot for hearing me quietly. Bye.